75 years ago, the HMT Empire Windrush arrived at Tilbury Dock, carrying Caribbean people who came to work and live in the UK. Citizens of what were then British colonies were invited by the UK government to help rebuild Britain after the war. Between 1948 and 1971, men, women and children from across the Caribbean would travel to the UK for a new life. They would become known as the Windrush generation. Here is the story of two Metroline colleagues who came to Britain in their youth during that time.
My name is Cosmo Van Riel, but most Metroline colleagues would know me as Michael Van Riel.
My name is Uriel Bedward. My age is 67 and I'm from Jamaica.
I'm from Jamaica. I came over here in October of 1974 to join my mum, who came to the UK in 1959.
My father came before me, and then my mum came after her, and then I came 1966.
I came over here as a boy to what I know is a very strange country, but I did not know that at the time, because as far as I am aware, England is a paradise, place of paradise where, believe it or not, you learn that money grows on tree. You're quickly gonna learn it's not. It does not. My mum, she was part of the getting people from the various parts of the world, and she came over here to be a nurse. But when she arrived in the UK, she never had the qualification. So at those times, in those days, basically go to night school and get the necessary qualification to be an auxiliary nurse. And she qualified after a couple of years, and she had that job all her life.
I was sent for. I didn't have to make my way here. The funny thing is, I thought I was coming for holiday. So when I came, I was in a good mood because I know I'm going to go back. You know, but I would keep asking my parents, when am I going back? When is this holiday going to finish? And they would just avoid the question. And I realized that I wasn't going back. And it was a bit painful, but over time, I get to love the country, you know, and decide I have to make my life here. Oof. You know, you're coming from a warm country, a hot country, and a long flight on the plane. BOAC was the airline at the time, British Overseas, so whatever. And arriving in the airport, it was like being in a freezer. You know, you would breathe and you would see this mist. It was kind of fun. It was like you were smoking, you know. But the weather and the coldness, that was one of my first memories of this country.
My earliest memory in arriving in England, we came up with British Airways stewardess, because me and my brother was accompanied by the stewardess. It was fine, strange, naturally never been in an aeroplane before. So when we arrived at Heathrow, everything was okay until the plane door opened. Once the plane door opened, that was a different world, because whereas I was dressed for the hot summer of Jamaica, I quickly realized that the weather over here is something that I've never experienced. I was told anything about it, so I was actually shivering. If I should describe it in my own words, how I felt that like I was a musician. My bones, my teeth, everywhere was shaking, was shivering. And to make matters worse, at the time, the buses come to the airplane, and you have to get off the airplane, walk downstairs, and go to the bus, which is absolutely freezing cold. And by the time you go through custom and time to meet my mother, I don't know how I survived it, because I swear to God that I thought I was gonna die. I've never experienced anything that cold. When I leave the airport on my way to when we used to live at that time, we used to live in Kingsmead, Hackney. I can remember asking my mum, how come so many dry trees are in England? Because I don't use the tree shedding his leaf, and that was my perception of why so many dry trees.
Well, I lived with my parents. I was still a child, going to school. I had a few friends, but I was mostly school home. I didn't really associate much with other people. My parents had their close family members, and I would, visit them on certain occasions. We would have parties. House parties were fantastic. I loved them. I was a child I was taken along, and lovely experience. Love that.
It was okay. It was strange. One of the strangest things I came across was getting a haircut. Because being back in Jamaica as a boy, you always get a really good haircut by experienced person who know how to cut black people hair. I remember my stepfather took me to a barber, an English guy, and he basically, he cut white people hair, you pick the hair and then clip the top of it. So when I leave this barber shop, right, I had to cover up my head because I can't allow anyone to see me, because my hair was like cane rope, where it was lumps cut out of my head, and it was terrible. So naturally I never repeated that, but that was one of my worst experiences. Well, I think for the men, I think that was one of the first things they learned to do, because it was also part of getting black people to work the Caribbean, in particular to work on buses. I can remember myself, one of the first job I applied for was to work on the bus as a conductor, because I didn't have no qualification at all, and the only thing I was qualified to do was to work as a bus conductor.
Well, I was doing engineering before I started, and I did that for about 4 years, and the company was closing down. So I thought I'd come on the buses for a short spell and then go back to engineering, but it didn't happen. The bus job was cushy. I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was London Transport at the time, and it was like a family. I did my training in Chiswick, which was a centre for training. Did all the skid pad, drive the bus and whatever. It was fun. It was fun.
I remember going to Stamford, like the time that's where the office used to be, and miraculously I passed the test. But when it was time for me to be employed, I was told, you're too tall. Which I find was strange, because I thought they could have told me that before. So I was too tall, so I was turned down. I went back again, and again, same issue. But this time I was told before, your height does not allow you to be a conductor.
The buses were a lot different from what they are now. I didn't experience the RTs. They had different version of buses. They had hard T's. When I came into the job, they had RMN, route masters, which open platform, you could jump on the back. But even as children going to school, it was fun. You jump on the buses when they're moving slow. So it's a big change to what the buses are now. And when I came into the job, it was the route masters, and they were tough to drive, because the steering, they had big steering wheels, and no power steering like what we have now. It was all hydraulic, and if the steering fluid had leaked out, and the steering would get very stiff, so drivers had to put the muscles in. It was fun. And there were drivers, and there were conductors. And when I started in the job, I started as a conductor, and that was fun. You get to associate with people, so you learn people's skills. Yeah.
One thing I noticed that when I go inside the canteen at Sunday, it used to be, especially on Friday, where black people will play dominoes, have food, curry goat, jerk chicken, etc., etc., and they have as boisterous as they can be, loud, enjoy their domino, and those are the happy memory of seeing black people working the transport. Even though you just say to me, you don't want to join the industry, you want to go and get some education and do something better. But to me, most of the people who was talking to me and giving me those advice, their children have gone to university, right? So it shows me, and their houses are already paid for. So it was providing for them, and has provided for them all the time once over here. Because most of us, when we came over here in the early days, we haven't got the necessary qualification to be a manager, supervisor, senior supervisor. I taken any position. Not all of us, I just said most of us. Because when we were recruited, we was recruited because we didn't have the necessary skills over there other than the little farming and so forth. But over here, you can develop the help in every which way they can, because you're not going to turn down the job whilst over here. What I find was rather disturbing is come across where you see in the late 70s, you come across where they said no black, no Irish, no dog. So we was always fighting against the system.
Yeah, you know, my parents and other adults would talk about, you know, when they go to rent somewhere and they would have signs up that says no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. So, you know, when I hear that, it sort of make me realize the Irish was in the same sort of class or group as the black person.
In the bus industry again, what you'll find is 99.9% of the people working in the industry were drivers or conductors, because we were never given the opportunity.
Well, they contributed a lot to Britain, especially the first generation of the Windrush. They came to support the war effort, you know, and even after that, after the war, they needed workers. They were here to build up the country, because my dad was in the building industry, and he was, you know, he would change job regular to whatever could suit, and he even worked in a hospital as a porter, you know. So the Caribbean people, they did a wide range of jobs, and they're still doing it now.
We was used as a commodity, right? We came over here to help build up the motherland because they could not find the workers to do the job. We, as a Windrush community, we do anything. We don't turn down anything, because our goal is to quickly, our parents, all right, is to get some money to send back to us to sort of help us to, because we didn't have where we could provide all the agricultural stuff, we didn't have the money. So we will do anything that we can. So our parents would do 2, 3, 4 jobs just to make ends meet. They were put into little rooms, probably 4 people in one room. And I don't mean the same family, different people, different family. So those are the way they work. So therefore they will try their best to try and work money to buy a house, and as quick as possible to move out of those kind of situations. And so that's another thing that I can remember from talking to the elders. What is unfortunate is it's so long ago that most of the people that you really need to talk to has gone with the experience, and their story has never been told. That's very unfortunate. But I would say to all the young people, from the ethnic community, you have to try. No one's gonna open the door for you. Sometimes you have to kick that door down to achieve what you know you're capable of achieving.